Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to start our evening proper. If I could kindly invite you to take your seats. Thank you. Good evening, Mrs. Josephine Teo, Minister for Digital Development and Information, Minister in charge of Smart Nation and Cybersecurity. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to the Singapore International Cyber Week Summit, or SICW Summit for short. I'm Charmaine E, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be your host tonight. The SICW Summit kicks off its 9th edition, and this year's theme is Trust and Security in the Digital Era. We live in a digital era built on trust. Trust is vital for states to cooperate, connect, and exchange information and data with each other. Trust is also critical for governments, citizens, and industries to interact and organize our systems, social, political, and economic way of life. Supported, of course, by digital platforms and systems. Without trust, people, governments, and businesses would not be able to reap the social and economic benefits of digitalization. Tonight, we are absolutely honored that you are here this evening. If you look around you in our room, we have key cybersecurity personalities from across government, private sector, and academia join us tonight. Here at the SICW Summit, we also have ministerial and senior government representatives, industry leaders, and key cyber, digital, and of course tech personalities. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it brings me great pleasure to be inviting Mrs. Josephine Teo, Minister for Digital Development and Information, Minister in charge of Smart Nation and Cybersecurity Singapore, up on stage for her welcome address. Minister, please.
Fellow ministers, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. Let me first extend a very warm welcome to all participants of the Singapore International Cyber Week 2024. Thank you for making time to be here, especially our overseas guests. Your presence here speaks volumes about the shared importance we place on addressing cybersecurity challenges. We hope this event serves as a platform for the robust exchange of perspectives and ideas on how to tackle the critical issues we all face in securing our cyberspace. The theme for this year's SICW is Building Trust and Security in the Digital Era. It is particularly timely for me to speak about this topic. 2 weeks ago, our Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, launched our refreshed Smart Nation strategy. Among other goals, he reaffirmed the importance of upholding trust in the digital age. Indeed, our citizens and enterprises must feel confident in the digital infrastructure that they depend on in their daily lives. Our investors must be able to trust that their operations and assets are secure in our digital economy. Only by having a trusted smart nation can we maintain public confidence in a shared digital future and continue to be an attractive place to live and do business. However, as we all know, building and maintaining trust is an ongoing challenge. Bad actors of today are constantly innovating, developing new methods to exploit vulnerabilities. Cyber issues have become more complicated. We face increasing risks, such as concentration risks involving third-party vendors, cyber espionage incidents, and ransomware attacks, all of which occupy our collective attentions. In response, Singapore has taken the proactive approach of enhancing our regulatory levers to improve the security and resilience of our digital infrastructure. Earlier this year, we updated the Cybersecurity Act to strengthen the safeguards for our critical information infrastructure. We expanded its regulatory ambit beyond essential services to include foundational digital infrastructure, the building blocks of the digital world. Things like data centers and cloud services that power our digital economy and the products and services that we use daily. We're also looking to introduce a new Digital Infrastructure Act to complement existing regulations and address a broader set of resilience and security risks faced by digital infrastructure and service providers. These range from technical misconfigurations to physical hazards such as fires, and we must find ways to mitigate the likelihood and impact of systemic disruptions. But no nation can tackle these challenges in silos. Cyber threats are borderless. Therefore, international cooperation is essential in our efforts to build a trusted cyberspace. Cyber diplomacy is essential, especially during such fraught times, and it cannot be limited to our friends and countries who think like us. It is all the more important to include countries who have different worldviews and who do not necessarily think like us. If we avoid difficult conversations, we will most certainly not be able to avoid difficult consequences. This explains why Singapore actively collaborates with other countries on various digital trust and security issues, from cybercrime to cybersecurity threats. We will do our part to contribute to a multilateral, rules-based cyberspace we can trust and our citizens can benefit from. Singapore currently chairs the 5-year United Nations Open-Ended Working Group on Security of and in the Use of ICTs. This serves as the only UN platform where all states, which includes many of us here today, can come together to cooperate against existing and emerging cyber threats and support efforts to advance an open, secure, and interoperable cyberspace. Notwithstanding the geopolitical tensions and differences, I am pleased that the OEWG has successfully adopted the 3rd Annual Progress Report by consensus at the 8th Substantive Session in July this year. It highlights our collective commitment to advance multilateralism in the cyberspace undergirded by rules, norms, and principles of responsible state behavior. In addition, Singapore is a member of the Counter-Ransomware Initiative, a group that brings together 68 states and international organizations to cooperate in countering the threat posed by ransomware criminals. Several of our CRI partners, such as Australia, Canada, Germany, Philippines, the UK, Vietnam, and Interpol, are here this evening. As the co-chair of the policy pillar with the UK, Singapore is working with members on policy measures to enhance the resilience of CRI members and disrupt the ransomware business model. Of note, at the 4th CRI Summit earlier this month, members, alongside a group of cybersecurity insurers, jointly issued a guidance for organizations during ransomware incidents to help victim organizations to consider the various steps to take and make informed decisions when facing a ransomware incident. Regionally, we have made progress to operationalize the ASEAN Regional CERT. This initiative serves to enhance the timely sharing of information as well as regional coordination to address cybersecurity threats and incidents. In February 2024, at the ASEAN Digital Ministers meeting, which I chaired in Singapore, ASEAN member states agreed on the financial model for the ASEAN Regional CERT. We are heartened by the trust placed in us by our fellow ASEAN member states for Singapore to fund and host the physical facility of the ASEAN Regional CERT for up to 10 years. We will be sharing more about the next steps for this important initiative under the leadership of Malaysia as our first rotating overall coordinator with all partners. Beyond governments, we are exploring ways to expand partnerships with industry players to improve digital security outcomes. At last year's SICW, we announced the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore and Google, and this partnership has borne fruit. In February this year, CSA and Google rolled out a new co-developed enhanced fraud protection feature to protect Android users registered in Singapore from apps that are likely to be malicious. This feature is the first of its kind and has had promising results in protecting our citizens. It has also generated much international interest, with Thailand and Brazil exploring similar collaborations. In conclusion, we welcome further cooperation with like-minded partners as we continue to navigate an increasingly complex cyberspace. There is always more to be done to collectively strengthen trust and security in our cyberspace. And I believe that the SICW is a platform for us to start or continue conversations on how we can better share knowledge and collaborate to create a global cyberspace that we can all trust. This evening, we also look forward to hearing from my good friend, the Malaysian Minister of Digital, YB Gobind Singh Deo. He will share more about Malaysia's perspective on how to build trust and security in the digital era. I have no doubt that he will provide many useful insights. So on that note, I would like to thank everyone once again for making your way to attend SICW, and I wish all of you a productive and engaging week in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your valuable insights on how trust and security are integral to Singapore's smart nation efforts, and of course the importance of building a global cyberspace that we can all trust together. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful night ahead of us. A keynote speech in a few moments, a fireside chat with the Malaysia Minister of Digital. Before we proceed with the rest of the program, ladies and gentlemen, dinner is now served. Bon appetit, and I'll be right back. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I trust you're having a great dinner so far. At this point, I'd like to invite Yang Berhormat Tuan Gobind Singh Deo, Malaysia's Minister of Digital, Ministry of Digital, up on stage to deliver the keynote address. Minister Gobind, please.
Thank you very much, Madam MC. Mrs. Josephine Teo, Minister for Digital Development and Information, and Minister in charge of Smart Nation Cybersecurity, Singapore. Mr. David Koh, Commissioner of Cybersecurity and Chief Executive, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. Yang Berhormat Pangeran Datuk Seri Setia Syamhari Mustafa, Minister of Transport and Info Communications, Brunei Darussalam. Mr. Ivan John Uy, Secretary of Information and Communications Technology, the Philippines. Mr. Wang Yingkang, Deputy Director General, Cyberspace Administration for China, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening to all of you, and thank you very much for having me here this evening. This is an interesting topic, and I think one that we are all extremely concerned about, and therefore this discussion is apt and timely. This morning, like each and every one of you, I placed my trust in a multitude of systems and of course without even thinking about it, as we do each and every day. I trusted my alarm clock to wake me up on time, and it did. Trusted my phone to connect me to my team moving ahead into the day. And of course, trusted even the car that picked me up and then navigated the roads and traffic lights, which I hoped operated correctly as I made my way here. But the trust didn't just stop there. I trusted that airline that brought me to Changi Airport, the airport security to keep me safe, and the systems that checked my passport, verified my credentials and identity. At every stage of this journey, my confidence rested on a seamless blend of multiple hardware and software, each system silently assuring me that my information is safe, that my transactions are secure, and in that sense, that I am protected. And here we are today. Some of us, hundreds or even thousands of miles away from home, gathered right here in this room, all of us relying heavily on these trusted systems that brought us here together safely. Yet, how often do we all pause to reflect on this invisible web that holds our digital world together? All of us place an implicit trust in our devices, our mobile applications, our networks, and our governments to live and work as seamlessly as we do. But this trust, vital as it is indeed very, very fragile. In the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world that we live in today, cyber threats loom large. Ensuring digital trust is therefore no longer an option. It is an imperative. We trust our digital devices and systems because they enable us to run our lives smoothly. But this trust isn't new. Way back in 1762, the political philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau spoke of a social contract, an agreement between individuals and their governing authorities, one that was built on mutual trust and responsibility. That same principle applies today, almost 3 centuries on. Only now, it extends into the digital realm. In this digital age, we have entered a new kind of social contract. We hand over our data, our privacy, and in return, we expect security, reliability, and transparency from the platforms, the devices, and services that we use. And just like Rousseau's social contract, when trust is broken, the agreement unravels, and, importantly, confidence is lost. We see this in instances where personal data is breached. Artificial intelligence fuels mis- and disinformation, and certain quarters, large quarters, abuse concentrated power. This is why digital trust is no more just a technical issue. It's one that needs to be looked at in a social sense, one that needs to be urgently addressed. Against this backdrop, the World Economic Forum defines digital trust as individuals' expectation that digital technologies and services and the organizations providing them will protect all stakeholders' interests and uphold societal expectations and values. In other words, digital trust does not impose obligations on just one entity in isolation. It is that complex, interdependent network of relationships reliant on each and every actor to uphold their end of the social contract. This trust runs deeper than we often realize. It operates on many levels, not just in the devices we hold, but in the ecosystem of platforms, applications, and services that now facilitate and empower our daily lives. Whenever you send a message on WhatsApp, order a Grab ride, or add to your cart on Shopee, you trust this intricate web of technology, expecting it to work seamlessly and securely, protecting you from risks at every stage. The recent CrowdStrike outage is a textbook example of how this trust is most easily lost. A single piece of code brought down networks of hospitals, banks, and airlines worldwide. And this was caused by a non-malicious actor. Now just imagine what a malicious threat actor can do with an expanding attack surface as the world's digital footprint grows. For example, in February this year, a cyber attack on Change Healthcare caused a backlog of unpaid claims in the United States. It disrupted cash flow for clinics and hospitals and affecting patients' access to care. Authorities later discovered that a substantial amount of data relating to health had been leaked onto the dark web. That breach, it is reported, occurred because of a failure to implement multi-factor authentication, a somewhat basic industry standard. This brings us now to consider the important question of how many system operators, which are actually entrusted with our personal data, actually do implement even basic industry standard practices. Are there even such practices in place to begin with? And if so, are they effective and compliant with global thresholds? Speaking at the IAPP Global Privacy Summit in the year 2022, Tim Cook said, companies are mining data about the details of our life, the shops and restaurants we frequent, saying it is to serve us better. But they don't believe we should have a real choice in the matter, or that they should need our permission to enter into our personal lives. When a person monitors your every move in the physical world, this would be cause of concern. In the digital world, it should rightfully be one too. So how can we build a trustworthy digital world? Key to this is a shift in the way we think, to look into efforts to strengthen standards, to make devices safer, to make applications safer, to build ecosystems around them that are not just safer, but inspire our confidence. Valid digital certificates, for instance, ensure the security and trustworthiness of our digital interactions. These certificates, which verify the identity of websites and organizations, must be regularly audited and kept valid so as to ensure ongoing trust and security. Expired or breached certificates can lead to serious problems like outages and loss of data. We must also now speak about the impact of new technology, such as AI and generative AI. Take images, for instance. In a world that is facing a global election year, with roughly 2 billion people eligible to vote in many countries, constituents need to know what they see and read online is real and truthful. When you scroll through your news feeds daily, or don't we all know this in the infamous WhatsApp conversations, forwarded messages, how can you know if a piece of content which you read is authentic or synthetic? Was it altered, or is it in its original form? As the Chief Justice of Malaysia, Tun Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat, recently said, reliance on AI and other generative tech is growing, but there are very few laws in place to regulate its use. Furthermore, she said that while local cyber laws are developing, the abuse that we see of bots, deepfake technology, the dark web, and the general cloak of anonymity online also possesses significant problems and risks when trying to bring offenders to book for their crimes. She added, and I quote, "The fact that these crimes can take place digitally significantly widens the group of victims, and it also allows for maximum damage potential long before the offender can even be identified, much less prosecuted successfully." Nevertheless, end of quote. Nevertheless, we are starting to see tangible solutions to these challenges. New standards have been designed to tackle the provenance and authenticity of digital assets. This means we now know if a photo is taken with a camera, whether it has been edited by software or generated by AI. This transparency helps. It helps users make informed decisions about the content that they consume, be it photos, videos, or audio. And it plays certainly that most crucial role in building digital trust. But this is just one solution to the myriad of uncharted challenges in a sprawling AI landscape. What do we do with what do we do with large language models, or LLMs? These models are only as good as the data they are trained in. Biased data will inevitably produce biased outputs. Insufficient or flawed data and incorrect modeling assumptions will produce AI hallucinations. LLMs are often described as black boxes. Users cannot see how these models generate responses or the data that they're trained on, making it very difficult to understand how they come to their conclusions. Thus, raising significant questions about accountability and trust. And as AI systems grow increasingly capable of acting autonomously, potentially edging towards artificial general intelligence, even more ethical questions arise. Who then is responsible if an AI model makes a harmful or even misleading decision? How do we navigate a world where AI systems may be misaligned with human values? During his presentation at Wharton's second annual Business and Generative AI workshop in San Francisco last month, Eric Brynjolfsson, author, inventor, and Stanford University professor, where he directs the Digital Economy Lab, made a prediction. He said, AGI, or generative AI, will make human intelligence very narrow within 5 years. Some have predicted even sooner. If that's not enough, then there's this threat of future next-generation technology. The rise of immersive technology, for example, such as the metaverse, holds great promise as the next frontier of the internet, converging our physical and virtual lives. Now, this is going to create digital worlds where we can act, interact, and transact on a hyper-personalized scale. But as some quarters build wall gardens to dominate these ecosystems, it also in turn raises critical questions about the future of data privacy and security. What will this concentration of power mean for the integrity of our personal information and digital lives? Quantum technology, for example, poses a grave risk to technological sovereignty, even national security and cybersecurity. If large-scale quantum computers are built, as we read, they could break encryption systems currently in use, a scenario commonly known as QD. This would severely compromise any and every sector that relies on encrypted data. It changes everything. We must ensure our critical information infrastructure systems are therefore prepared with measures which mitigate these risks and protect us as new technology develops. We must now prepare for what is to come ahead. We as governments must prepare our countries and as ASEAN region for these challenges. Then there's the flip side to the problem. We spoke of devices, networks, and apps earlier. It comes back to us, awareness and skills. Today, the global cybersecurity sector faces a shortage of 4.8 million workers. On average, the traditional bachelor's degree takes 3 to 4 years to achieve. That shortage gap is growing faster than we can plug in. Relying on old solutions for new challenges is no longer, therefore, an option. So how fast can we move ahead? How fast can we develop more skilled talent in the cyber workforce? Digital apprenticeships, or as I like to call them, DVET, could be the answer. Imagine providing high school graduates with paid training opportunities with talent-hungry tech companies, and doing it at scale, ensuring that each and every one that enrolls for any course has at least a subject that focuses on cyber security. This could create entirely new, cost-effective, alternative career pathways for talent, bypassing traditional university degrees. This is an area for us to consider, particularly when it comes to talent in cybersecurity and regaining trust in our digital future. We must also not forget the wealth of untapped potential in our existing workforce. As the nature of jobs shift along with technological advancement, employers must be encouraged and also incentivized to invest in continuous learning and on-the-job development for their staff. The key is to upskill and reskill as we go along, instead of only when we see job disruption created by new technology. Talent is not the only dimension that has evolved with the digital world. Ladies and gentlemen, bad actors have also kept up with technology, taking full advantage of vulnerabilities in existing and emerging digital ecosystems. We have new types of crimes that did not exist previously, and crimes that we often hear of, which are now pushed ahead even more meticulously. Traditional crimes are being facilitated by new technology as well. In the year 2022, the United States Department of Treasury detected an increase in the use of virtual assets for money laundering activities. As the digital world moves forward, we must ensure, therefore, that areas of enforcement and our thinking about enforcement is not left behind. Taking a step back and bringing all these threads together, we now look to see at what we in Malaysia have done to foster digital trust in all layers of society. Ladies and gentlemen, in March this year, Malaysia passed its landmark Cybersecurity Act. This act came into force on the 26th of August this year. This act lays the foundation for the protection of national critical information infrastructure against cybersecurity threats and establishes a clear governance through a National Cybersecurity Committee led by the Prime Minister. It also mandates a licensing regime for cybersecurity service providers, ensuring only those qualified are authorized to deliver cybersecurity services. And this qualification is important as we move ahead. To operationalize the Act, 4 critical regulations have been issued. This includes requirements for conducting cybersecurity risk assessments and audits, mandatory requirements, mandatory notification of cybersecurity incidents, the compounding of offenses, and licensing rules for cybersecurity providers. Together, these measures create a comprehensive, future-ready regulatory framework to strengthen national security in cyberspace. In addition to that, in July this year, we amended our Personal Data Protection Act of 2010, introducing mandatory data breach notifications and pushing for stricter penalties for non-compliance and regular audits as well. The amendments also introduce a data protection officer whose role is to ensure that organizations now comply with data protection regulations in Malaysia. Malaysia will launch in November a National AI Office, or NAIO, While this represents a significant milestone for the country in terms of technological advancement, the Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, just 2 weeks ago, re-emphasized that the need for the office is to develop necessary safeguards and what he calls a robust framework in order to promote the adoption and sustainable ethical AI practice. This legislation and regulations form the bedrock of digital trust in Malaysia. But data protection and security are not ends in themselves. We protect and secure data because we want to encourage its use. Data ultimately is from the people and for the people. In view of this, my ministry will introduce a data sharing bill that will create a clear regulatory framework for sharing public sector data. With this act in place, we expect to spur innovation and value creation in a trusted, safe, and secure digital ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe we are on track. Our aim is to unify these efforts under a proposed new entity, the Digital Trust and Safety Commission, a commission which will govern digital trust, security, data sharing, and data governance in our country, as well as anticipate future needs. Apart from the National AI Office, we are also preparing to launch strategies deal with quantum to stay ahead of emerging technologies. Therefore, in the last 10 months since the establishment of my ministry, the Ministry of Digital, a new ministry in Malaysia, we have taken steps, real steps, I may add, to build a trusted digital ecosystem in Malaysia. But yet, there is more to be done. Just last week, Malaysia officially assumed the ASEAN chairmanship for the year 2025. Now, in a world where cyber threats are increasingly transnational in nature, we reaffirm our commitment to deepening regional integration, combating cyber threats, and upholding a rules-based multilateral order in cyberspace. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN has already laid strong foundations with 2 iterations of the ASEAN Cybersecurity Cooperation Strategy, or ACCS, which of course was introduced in 2017, the first being from 2017 to 2020, the second from 2021 to 2025. As we chart the next 5-year cycle, Malaysia will intensify cooperation, align with global efforts, and enhance collaboration with ASEAN dialogue partners. We also look forward to the launch of the ASEAN Regional Computer Emergency Response Team, or CERT, which we believe will play a key role in facilitating timely information exchange and also, that most important, coordinating our collective regional response to cyber incidents. Ultimately, ASEAN countries are united in a common purpose to build a trusted digital ecosystem that benefits all of us. Through joint initiatives, shared knowledge, and collaborative frameworks, we will strengthen regional cybersecurity and data governance. This really isn't just commitment on paper. It is tangible, collective, and effort to protect our citizens, secure our infrastructure, and promote innovation as we go along. At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, we will once again place our trust in that multitude of systems that I mentioned at the opening of my speech. We will trust the networks that connect us to our hotels and homes, the mobile applications that manage our transportation, and the digital services that facilitate our communications along the way. And we can do this, trust, with confidence, knowing that across Southeast Asia, we are not working in isolation. We are building collectively a foundation of digital trust. Together, I believe we can empower the region's digital economies and ensure that our connected future is secure, resilient, and prosperous for all. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I must thank you for inviting me to be along with you this evening. Thank you for your attention. Thank you to our gracious host, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, for inviting me to this important event here today. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you very much, Minister Gobind. If I could kindly ask that you remain on stage and take your seat for our fireside chat. And I'd like to invite Mr. David Koh, Commissioner of Cybersecurity and Chief Executive, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, Chief of Digital Security and Technology, Ministry of Digital Development and Information, Singapore, to moderate the fireside chat. Mr. Koh, stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Minister Gobin, for that insightful sharing of Malaysia's perspective, your perspectives on trust and security in the digital era. I'm confident that many of these insights and perspectives will be further discussed and elaborated in the next few days during SICW. And a very good evening to our international friends and colleagues who have taken time out, come from their busy schedules and come all the way to Singapore this week. A very warm welcome, and also very happy to see our local colleagues who are playing a critical role in cyberspace, who have also joined us as well. It's good to see many familiar faces on this 9th iteration of the Singapore International Cyber Week. It's an honor to welcome everyone here today to this fireside chat, and we'll delve a little bit deeper into this year's Singapore International Cyber Week topic on trust and security in the digital era. As our populations become increasingly more dependent on digital ways of life, as so aptly described by Minister Gobin, the ability to secure our technologies has become increasingly crucial. And no matter how innovative a digital solution is, our citizens and businesses will not use that technology if there is a lack of trust or confidence. Cybersecurity is what underpins that trust in the digital realm. It is about seizing the economic opportunities and social development as much as about national security. And as the Minister has pointed out, cybersecurity is inherently borderless. Most of us would agree that digital and cybersecurity are issues that we need to come together to address for collective economic and social betterment. Despite the geopolitical tensions, or perhaps because of the geopolitical tensions and tech contestation that we see, we have, in the midst of all these tensions, we think that cyber diplomacy is especially important. And it's for this reason that we have convened this Singapore International Cyber Week so that we can facilitate these conversations, move out of our respective comfort zones to engage with diverse and sometimes diverging or even opposing views, including those who may have a different worldview from ourselves. And this is what we hope that SICW can facilitate. I'm privileged today to share the stage with Malaysia's first ever Minister for Digital, Yang Berhormat Tuan Gobin Seng Dio, to understand how a Southeast Asian nation is working nationally and regionally to achieve trust and security in the digital age. Now, I'll begin with a few questions to Minister Gobin, but I want to welcome all of you to submit your questions and comments on our e-platform Slido. Please, trust the technology. You can do so by scanning the QR code on the screens. Alternatively, you can go to slido.com and enter hashtag SICW Summit. So on that note, please scan the QR code, trust the technology, have confidence in the digital world, and I'll await your questions. But in the meantime, I have the privilege to begin by asking Minister some questions. The theme of SICW is trust and security, and it's very much about this fine balancing act to ensure security on the one hand, but without stifling economic progress or innovation. And with the adoption of these, it can't be fully successful without securing trust in technologies. Minister Gobin, as Malaysia's first Minister for Digital, what are your priorities? And could you perhaps share with us the approaches that you are taking in Malaysia to achieve trust and security in the digital age?
Thank you very much, David. Of course, first, let me just put on record that this, as I said earlier in my speech, the ministry has been up and running for just close to 10 months now. It was a new initiative, thought about by our Prime Minister, announced it in December last year. It's been an incredible journey, particularly shaping the ministry and, of course, setting out what it needs to do in the next 4 years. You're absolutely right, David. We all speak of innovation, and I think as we look at how things unfold globally, the focus is how governments could encourage more innovation, facilitate more companies to do what they need to do in terms of innovation. But at the same time, we also recognize the fact that technology, although it comes with benefits, it also comes along, it also carries with it risks. So this is whole issue of how we govern technology and how it is we deal with the risks moving ahead. It's a dilemma. Regulate too much, you stifle innovation. Regulate too little, you create risks. Regulate too fast, people get angry with you. Don't regulate too fast, people ask you, why haven't you done anything? So it's a bit of a delicate balance that we need to choose. And I think this is something that we see happening all over the world. If you look at some of the countries that have dealt with regulation and governance, for example, you take EU. The EU has come up with an AI Act. It's also come up with a Digital Services Act, Digital Marketing Act. They also have Data Act and data governance laws in place. And that's a very legislative and regulatory approach, one that makes very clear what it is you can't do. That's, of course, on one side. Then you look at United States, for example, you have the Biden executive order that takes us a different view, more or less saying that we don't want to legislate. What we'll do is we'll let the industry look at how it is things ought to flow, so they create standards of their own as they move along, and it's left to the industry to grow regulation around it. And you have other countries that also manage the problem. China, for example, very state and consumer-based approach, so legislation in place protecting consumer rights. And these are just what we call particular countries. You've also got discussions that have brought about the focus on how it is we can collaborate globally. You have the Hiroshima Declaration last year, where the G7 met, and they also spoke about how it is all countries need to have their own regulatory frameworks, but you must find a way and a mechanism by which these frameworks can actually work together to become interoperable, so that you can create global security and trust. So it's a huge task to determine what it is you need to do. But in Malaysia, our position is that following from that, drawing all the threads together, we look at certain key areas. First and foremost, I think it's a question of data storage. So we need to make sure that we have laws and policies that ensure that data that is used is stored properly. And now with data centers and cloud facilities that you have, the discussion that is ongoing. In Malaysia, we are coming up with a national cloud policy, which hopefully will be able to deal with this. So that's storage. And after storage, then you move towards data protection. Data protection, of course, there's personal data protection laws that are already in place. David, in Malaysia, right, we had the law in 2010, earlier than Singapore. So, Singapore was 2012. Mrs. Josephine told me that earlier, right? So just 2 years ahead of Singapore. And of course, recently amendments to strengthen it. We have a data commissioner. He's got an office that looks into how it is we can improve on manner in which data is stored, manner in which it is used. And I think more importantly, as we go along and we see more breaches and problems occurring, we've also decided to enhance punishment so that people know that we are taking it seriously. And there's also been a series of cases that we've taken to court of late, the latest being yesterday, where we are now in the process of trying to test these laws, because we can only develop a legal system if you test them in court. So that's currently in progress. After that, of course, you've got the question of data security. You're looking at the critical information infrastructure. As I said earlier, in March this year, we managed to table and pass the cybersecurity bill. It's now the Cybersecurity Act, came into force recently. This is an act that deals with ensuring that these critical infrastructure, they are protected. We align ourselves with global requirements, global standards. So there's a committee that looks into standards and how it is these companies must ensure that these standards are met. If they don't meet those standards, then of course action is taken. we are strict about it, and we want to develop what we call as a new mindset. People understand that if they are going to deal with data, then there is this obligation on their part to ensure that the environment is safe, and that in the event there's a problem, there is swift notification so that action can be taken. We can contain the problem. We can try and minimize the impact of loss and, of course, the impact on people. So I think this is something that is quite innovative. This particular law creates a committee that is headed by the Prime Minister. It makes it a lot easier because I think those of us who are in digital ministries know that we are a ministry that, operates across all ministries. And those from government will know how difficult that is. So it's good to have the Prime Minister heading the committee to give instructions when there is a problem. Not that there are problems at all. Then, of course, finally, it really comes back down to innovation. So we talk about storage of data, we talk about protection, we also talk about security. But ultimately, we want to make sure that this data is used for its rightful purpose. Data can become the bedrock for innovation if it's allowed to be shared and used. So in that context, we're moving towards this data sharing bill. We've been working on it tirelessly for the last 6 months. I'm told that we'll be able to table it in this session of Parliament. Parliament started its last session for the year in Malaysia today. So hopefully by the second week of December, we'll have in place in Malaysia a Data Sharing Act, which will facilitate the sharing of data, and of course the security angles that we would want to impose in that scheme of legislation. And I think that would be perhaps a starting point after 10 months of creating a digital ecosystem that is trusted and secure. David, I hope that answers the question.
Very comprehensively, Minister, and very busy 10 months, if I may say.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you clearly pointed out the big challenge that all of us have. Do too much, people criticize you. Do too little, and they criticize you as well. So I wish you good luck in trying to find that Goldilocks zone.
Problems of government.
Now, let me move on to perhaps the region. As you've pointed out, Malaysia will be taking on the chairmanship of ASEAN. ASEAN has great potential, almost 700 million people.
Yep.
How can we seize the opportunities of the digital, and including things like AI that you mentioned? How can we achieve all of this, but while at the same time ensuring security? What would some of Malaysia's priorities be in the digital and cyber arena during your ASEAN chairmanship?
Thank you. I think, David, the first thing we need to do is understand that you look at digital literacy among ASEAN countries. Yes, we have 700 million people altogether. The potential of becoming an economic powerhouse in this region is certainly there. And at the end of the day, you look at digital literacy, internet connectivity. Most of the countries in ASEAN have infrastructures that are already set up. The records that I have earlier this afternoon, it seemed to suggest that you have almost 70% of the population that are actually internet savvy, using online systems. And I think that's about 570 million people who are practically already online, already digital, and who are just waiting and in a position to take full advantage of that digital economy and put that huge economic potential that we can unlock. The question now is how do we facilitate this? And if you speak about facilitation, I think there are certain key areas that we need to focus on. First, let's look at human capital. ASEAN, we have a very diverse population. Very talented. I think people speak different languages and very technology savvy as well. So they know their tech. They're not people who are alien to technology. So in terms of how it is we develop human capital further, I think that's something that we need to look at. And there are many initiatives that we can depend on for that particular purpose. For example, if you look at the ASEAN Digital Master Plan of 2025, there's focus points in, I think, the 8th chapter of it that refers specifically to how it is we can increase talent we can actually collaborate with each other to make sure that there is talent sharing, that we actually are in a position to offer expertise to different countries, and of course take advantage of what you call the digital economy in that particular way. So one of the things you need to do is ensure that we have a population that is able to take advantage of the facilities that we create for them, and of course the ease of business that we're going to create using the ASEAN platform moving along. Then of course you look at different strategies that have been put into place. One of the things that we're looking at is the Digital Economy Framework Agreement that is currently being discussed. I think this is something that's been going on for almost 2 years now, if I'm not mistaken, and I hope that towards the end of this year we'll be able to see it materialize. Now what that proposes to do is that it proposes to facilitate the ease of business, what you call among nations, which means that you will be able to trade a lot more conveniently and what you call easily across borders, and that's the kind of facilities that I think that we require so that the countries can actually move ahead with the digital economy. In addition to that, of course, when you look at creating systems that provide opportunity, the discussion comes back to what we were talking about earlier. You must ensure that we have focus on creating an ecosystem that is premised on trust. Because I always say you can create the best infrastructure in the world, and at the end of the day, if people are not convinced that they are safe when they use it, then they're not going to use it. So this is something that we need to think about. One of the things that we keep looking at is a transaction. Ordinarily, transactions, David, are transactions that are connected. What we call transactions that are done within a jurisdiction. So you have laws in place that actually deal with the transaction. If the transaction fails, then of course there are mechanisms by which you can actually find recourse. But today we are looking at facilitating an ASEAN region where trade occurs transnationally across borders. So the B2B transaction will be one that extends beyond a country. So if it extends to a different country, then you must make sure that the legal framework that you have doesn't just extend to your borders, but it doesn't extend beyond that because the transaction is complete somewhere else. So this is where we need to start looking at mechanisms by which ASEAN countries can sit together to ensure that they don't just have infrastructure that allows a trade across borders. They must also ensure that the cybersecurity features that are put into those systems are cybersecurity systems that are also adopted by other nations. So in other words, you want to make sure that I use infrastructure in my country because I know it's safe, but then the neighboring country must also make sure that they have ecosystems that are safe as well. And subsequently, the second part to it is that if there's a transaction and there's failure along the way, then the question is how do you deal with it? So there must be coordinated efforts and mechanisms that are in place that allow for that. I'll give you an example. Take CrowdStrike. I remember that particular day, we just switched on the computers and we had blue screens, I mean, not like this. Blue screen.
Darker blue.
Yes. And really nobody knew what was happening. That just showed the extent of how vulnerable we are. I mean, there are discussions all the time at ASEAN level, UN level, and what have you not. We speak about coordinating efforts. We speak about creating that platform or that particular unit where people look to in the event of an emergency. And we all recognize how important it is to have that mechanism set up. But we need to start moving. We need to actually get it done. We need to actually ensure that we are able to set it up and fast. We are lucky that in that particular episode of CrowdStrike, it was just a technical glitch. It did not involve a huge problem. Other things could have happened. And if it did, I don't think we would have been really prepared to deal with it. So this is where, when it comes to looking at how ASEAN can help, I think we need to start looking at the broader picture. This is what we call a region that is going to be heavily reliant and dependent on technology. It's going to be, of course, susceptible to the threats that exist. We need to therefore start thinking, if we are going to encourage people to trade with member states, we're going to encourage people to trade with the rest of the world, We're going to encourage them to use platforms that we build for them. We must be in a position to also say to them that we have already thought about and put into place mechanisms that are going to be able to assist you in the event there's a problem, not just from a legal standpoint, to exert your rights, but also to keep you secure. If there's an emergency, something happens, there is an attack, whether it's malicious or not, we've got a mechanism in place. There are people who are going to come in and stop it straight away and deal with it. I think that's the kind of thinking and conversations that we must start having in order to build that trust that we speak about today, David.
Thanks very much, Minister. So let me build on some of those points. Can you perhaps share your perspective of how you might want to involve private industry in the policy-making process in Malaysia? And on a related note, the thoughts on regulation, harmonization in ASEAN and beyond, especially since you talk about the importance that business is obviously cross-border.
Yes, thank you. I think this is where, David, we started with the cybersecurity bill. The idea behind the cybersecurity bill and subsequently amendments that we made to the Personal Data Protection Act in Malaysia, the whole focus was on how it is we could build awareness among industries, the private sector, that they too had an obligation to ensure that systems that they put into place were secure. You know, from a government perspective, we can only do so much. We can only say to people, look, there are threats, and the threats are real. Every single layer of the network that you use, the apps that you use, as I said earlier in my speech, you are susceptible to threats. Therefore, there is a need for people to take notice of the fact that you live in a world now where you are open to cyber attacks. You are vulnerable. So you're starting to look at pushing ahead with this zero trust approach, where you're saying to everyone, you cannot hope that things are safe by default. You cannot expect people to do what has to be done to keep yourself and your system secure. So in this regard, there are two things that you can do. One, you can create awareness, and you can call on the public to partake in this whole initiative where government pushes ahead with this cybersecurity agenda. But that can only go so far, because sometimes people are not motivated to do what needs to be done, be it for economic purposes or what have you not. So that is where you have to make the decision. Do you want then to legislate, to mandate the requirements that we now see drawn out in these two legislation? So for example, we create awareness, we push ahead, we tell people to come along and to get their systems up and secure. But we also feel that there's a need for us to legislate and to make it mandatory for assessments to be held, so that they ensure that their systems are secure. And in the event they don't do that, then of course there are consequences that follow. That's for the national critical infrastructure. When it comes to personal data protection, we have our commissioner. As I said earlier, we have data protection officers now. So we are also trying to inculcate that kind of a culture, where if you have a company, we understand that you may not resonate fully with what is required to make your system secure. If that be the case, then you can, of course, look towards a data protection officer. This is the officer that will tell you what needs to be done, so that at least you know that your organization has met the basic standards that are required in law, and that moving ahead, if there's a problem, then of course it's easier for you to deal with it because of the officer that you employ. So I think those are the initiatives that we've taken to try and push ahead the cybersecurity requirement among the public sector, David.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are running out of time, but I've got a whole bunch of good questions here. I don't think we can finish all of them. I'd like to flag out two for your consideration.
Sure.
How should countries deal with a tech contestation between the US and China? I mean, this is a rare occasion where we have senior officials both from the United States and China present here. And also, related to that, I wanted to ask that you spoke about the importance of trust. What do you think countries need to do more to work together to improve digital trust in our region?
All right, when it comes to China and America, I think our Prime Minister has made our position very, very clear. We are open and we work with both China and the US. The geopolitical problem exists. We know that it does. And of course, at the end of the day, it's really a question of us pushing ahead with our national policy. So we have no problems working with both China and the US. David, the question on how do we, the second question was,
How do we work closer together, build digital trust?
you know, sometimes you need something to pull everyone together, some sort of an event that makes it necessary to work together. I think the kind of value that you see, the digital economy unlocking, moving ahead, and the way in which the younger generation operates, doing everything online. I always say that the younger generation is not the problem. We are, they are used to it. They live that life. So they operate on different platforms. They know what digital is, and they, I'm sure, understand the problems that we face with cybersecurity as well. But moving ahead, in order for us to encourage systems, trusted systems, we must make sure that all countries come together, because you want to make sure that the system, or you create an ecosystem that spreads not just within your domestic boundaries, but one that extends not regionally and even globally. You must recognize the fact that people will start looking to transact transnationally. As we go along, that will become the norm. And when that becomes the norm, people will also expect that throughout that transaction, all the countries involved have in place systems that are secure. You may come to a point where you might be flagged out as the country that does not have systems which are secure, which may result in you losing business opportunities. As we develop, we speak about huge numbers now moving to 2030. For example, even just in ASEAN, potential of unlocking some $2 trillion in just digital economy. That's huge. But that's just 2030. Looking ahead, these numbers are going to expand even more. Digital acceleration is something that's going to kick in. New technology is going to come in, which makes us operate a lot faster than we currently operate. If we think things are fast now, things are going to get faster a lot sooner than we think. Now, if you put all of that together, you're going to understand that people are going to be looking for security not just locally. They're going to be looking for security regionally and even globally. So it is in that context that I say that countries will be then incentivized from a monetary perspective, economic perspective, to ensure that their systems are secure so that they can also take part in this new digital world in which, there's so much potential. So this is how it is, I think, things will operate. But I mean, at the same time, I also just want to put on record that collaboration, I mean, we work with many, many countries. And we see how it is, a lot has been done, especially the ASEAN platform. We've seen the discussions that we have had. People realize that there's a need for us to coordinate efforts. We need to make sure that at the end of the day, right, basic standards are set, guidelines are put out. We have what we call the OEWG. We have global POC directories that have been created that give you minimum standards. And so it's a discussion that expands beyond ASEAN, goes to the UN. We see a whole of the entire globe coming together to ensure that we can build an ecosystem that is trusted moving along. And I think that's because everybody realizes that you don't have an option. The only way forward is to get digital, literally. And I think that's what's going to motivate everyone to get things done fast moving ahead, David.
Thank you very much, Minister, especially to end on that optimistic note. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for the questions you have put in. I'm afraid we can't get through all of them. I think you will agree with me that Minister Gobind has been very generous with his time. I ask that you please give a big round of applause to Minister Gobind.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to pick up on a few points, and one of them is exactly as what the Minister has said. We're all connected in this digital arena, and we're only, not his words, mine, I paraphrase, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And it's imperative for all of us to level up. I think, from my perspective, cybersecurity is not an impediment to digital progress, but rather it is a key enabler for our collective digital ambitions. And if we can do that, then it fosters trust and confidence in our technologies, which we can use to the betterment of our societies. Trust is the invisible glue that holds our collective digital aspirations and ambitions together, and it's in our collective interest to build on this, even though the world faces multiple challenges. We can't work in silos. We have to develop, firstly, domestically, a whole-of-nation approach, I think as Minister has shared from Malaysia's perspective, alongside partnerships regionally and internationally. I think this certainly has been an enriching session. Thank you very much, Minister. And I think in the next few days, we'll have the opportunity, look forward to deeper conversations along these lines. And on that note, I think we now come, this is the end of the fireside chat. We finish off here, but I think we come to now, perhaps for some of you, what might be the most anticipated segment of the evening, and that's dessert will be served after this.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, everyone.
Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koh and Minister Gobind. I'd like to invite you to remain on stage for a photo, please. And indeed, we hope you found that fireside chat very insightful, and you may continue those conversations over dessert. Enjoy. Thank you, gentlemen.